Thank you very much. Hi, so I'm Jeremy Wadhams. I'm with Yahoo, and I'm here today to talk about how Yahoo made the decision to use Asterisk, the open source platform, as our telecom standard within the company. This talk goes out to the one other guy that identified himself as a Fortune 500, I guess. How many other people here consider themselves to be the customer in this when you're out on the show floor a little later on? Okay, so that's a little better. How many people here want to hook the big fish, want to sell to the Fortune 500? Okay, so for you guys, this is kind of the behind the scenes. This is how we made some of the decisions that got us where we are. So as a structure for this talk, I'm going to use the Kubler-Ross model of telecom evaluation. For those of you who haven't heard it before, I heard one laugh. Thank you very much. This is more commonly referred to as the 5 stages of grief. So in the beginning, Yahoo has had VoIP products, the messenger product, our acquisition of Dialpad, partnership products with British Telecom for ages. We weren't late to market on that. But the IT shop, because we're in Silicon Valley, because of who our friends are, because of the new employees coming into the company, we felt like we were late adopters on the diffusion of innovation model. And if you don't memorize ethnographic studies, this is the idea behind the diffusion of innovation. You've got magpies on the left, and they'll buy any damn shiny thing. And you've got people on the right that take a really long time to make up their mind. But if something's super useful, they will buy it eventually. And this isn't a dig on the Amish, by the way. If you do a search on Yahoo for Amish cell phone, there's a really cool article on Wired about what their technology adoption model is. It's actually a lot more nuanced than you'd necessarily give them credit for. So Yahoo at least perceived ourselves to be on the Amish side of the median with regards to voice over IP. So 2003, we acquire Overture. It brings in a lot of Avaya talent for us. At the same time, our CIO had worked at Octel and worked at Lucent, and he kind of put the line in the sand and said, we're behind here, guys. You need to do some IP telephony. Get out there and go do it. So we started doing IP telephony. We did some major sites, including a revenue-generating call center, which should have really worked to everyone's advantage. There were telecom features like skills-based routing. There were IP features. A call would come into a central data center, and then based on agent availability, we'd send it to Southern Oregon or Southern California. This should have really worked to everybody's advantage. And we didn't do a good job deploying it. We didn't do a good job thinking through our model. So as a result, what should have been a triumph of telephony had dropped calls. We had the Burbank site would go into survivability mode even when the WAN was healthy. A lot of angry people within IT. So the lessons that we learned, the biggest lesson that we learned here was the telecom team and the network team weren't playing nicely together. I think you're going to hear this a lot. I've certainly heard it at a lot of talks today. Somebody gave the telecom team the really, turns out, bad advice. Go treat your network team like a vendor. Treat them like you'd treat AT&T. So the telecom team came to the network team and said, we require 3 megabits of bandwidth from this closet in Burbank to this closet in Hillsboro. And the network team, in an act of malicious obedience, gave them exactly what they asked for. And that turns out to not have been the right decision. We backed this out. Ultimately, the right decision was we made the telecom network overlay the data network. So when the data network has a giant node in Northern California, so does the telecom network. And that layout really got us out of this stage. But it's worth mentioning that all of the people that a couple of minutes now in the story are going to make the decision that Asterisk is worth trying out were there during this time when there was no amount of money we could throw at Avaya. There was no salesman whose hand we could shake that could get us out of these dark times. It was, that strength had to come from inside of us. And I think that enabled us to make some of the decisions that we're going to make a little later in the story. So we got past the technology reasons to be angry, and we found a whole new reason to be angry, which was our telecom purchases started going through exactly the same process that server purchases went through, and especially laptop purchases went through. And those guys aren't fools. The hardware review committee, very sharp group of individuals, and they looked at a major project that we brought them, and they did the division, and they said, you're asking us to spend as much putting a desk phone out as we're about to spend on laptops for these new employees. And this is Yahoo. This isn't a call center. That's not right. That didn't feel like the appropriate use of resources. So HRC knew that we had been screwing around with Asterisk. I'm sure a lot of people here, how many people have screwed around with Asterisk? Okay, a lot of hands on that one. Very cool. So they knew we were screwing around with it. We'd showed them some technology demos. It never really went anywhere. So they negotiated with my VP, and they said, look, we're going to give you this money this time, but you need to build a friends and family model, and you need to show us why we're not supporting open source here. We support open source in our production, on our products. We support Apache. We're big members of the Apache Foundation. We support MySQL. Why are you guys doing this crazy thing on the telecom side? So we built a pilot. It started out as friends and family. Pretty soon it's my VP. It's one of the founders of the company. And it went really well. So we were able to make the decision to do a greenfield deployment in Dallas. 120 people. We're moving offices. We had the opportunity to walk away from a Nortel. And it went really well. And this is a watershed moment for me. This is late 2007 because they weren't volunteers and they weren't IT people and they didn't have to be forgiving if something screwed up. But it went really well. So as a result of that, between late 2007 and about the middle of last year, Asterisk was the standard. But it was the standard in this very bargain way. We kind of made this pact that, well, we'll do greenfields. And we had a lot of greenfields. We had a lot of acquisitions that year. And we'll do it if we couldn't have done it with Avaya or if we couldn't have done it with a $10,000 Nortel upgrade. So we were in the door, but it wasn't unconditional. We were scrabbling for every little bit of internal market share. So as part of that, we had a lot of great deployments. So that brings us into always not sunshine and puppy dogs here. About as everybody probably knows, between late 2007 and now, we got a new CEO, Carol Bartz, who I can't say enough nice things about. What you probably don't know is we also got a new CTO, CIO, Senior Director of IT, and Senior Manager of Global Telecom. So between the guys that actually worked on Asterisk and the top of the tree, that's 100% turnover. And of the managers that came in, one of them had, like everybody else here, had screwed around with Asterisk at some point in the past, had done what we had done in Dallas. They put some non-volunteers on it. It didn't go so well. And they actually went back to commercial telephony. So everybody else, all the other managers, hadn't played around with Asterisk, but they all had that sense. You guys have that sense in the pit of your stomach, like, telecom's just got a lot of nines. I just don't know how you could make this open source thing work and still get that lot of nines that I'm sure our users want. So we had a lot of angst around that. We spent about a month where we didn't do new telecom projects. We didn't do new deployments. And we had to reprove that the model that we were going with, that the standard we were going with, was actually going to work. Even though we had this great service record, we had about 25% internal penetration, we had to sit down and reprove ourselves under a new set of criteria. The harsh lesson for me out of all of this was the things that get you to 25% utilization, that kind of penetration inside of your company, are not going to get you to 100%. It's a totally different set of criteria. So the things that got us through the last phase, through the bargaining phase, were ridiculous hours and hard work and a tiny team that was just devoted to working miracles around this. The things that got us out of the depression were cross-training and formalizing our incident management flow, which our old incident management flow was, we got 3 really smart guys, you call them in alphabetical order, and the first one who answers is going to fix your problem for you. And don't ask what happens if the third one doesn't answer, because it's just never happened before. So as part of the revamping of that model, I want to give a little unpaid product endorsement to Digium at this point. Digium now has a service offering around open source Asterisk. So as a way of making my management comfortable that their smart guys weren't going to walk out the door with all this intellectual property, we were able to snap that support contract into place. We didn't have to change our technology stack. We didn't have to spend a lot of engineering resources on it. But the engineers know the Digium guys are going to give us great advice. The managers know that their asses are covered. Really, everybody wins. So that brings us back to today. Today, Asterisk is, again, the standard for global telecom at Yahoo. But this time, it's without all of those little niggling, well, it has to be greenfield, and you couldn't have done it with Nortel. So in the sense that you have to do things in some order, the targets that we're going after are, again, our knowledge users, the 95% of the company. We're going to go after call centers, but we're making this decision to go after them last so we can really have our solution straight there. So that's a little bit about how we made the decision. Now I want to talk a little bit about how company style, especially in a big company, when you have a lot of corporate culture, you have a lot of things that you're good at and things that you've been burned by, things you just know in the back of your head you can't go back and do again. How does that impact a design, especially with something like Asterisk? So when we build Asterisk, we start with a server running at Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The advantage of this is Yahoo has, without exaggeration, hundreds of thousands of servers. the vast majority of those servers are running Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which means because we're a Fortune 500 company, because we're a technology company, we have kernel developers, driver developers, system administrators, legendary backup experts. And because I've made this decision to go with the flow here, I get access to all of that. I love my MacBook Pro. It's a little piece of aluminum joy. But if we decided we were going to run Asterisk on Mac Minis, we'd be cut off from all of that support. And it just wouldn't make the model work. So the other thing that's worth noticing, the reason this is a big gray box is we have a great operating system team, and they've really abstracted from me. I don't have to care what hardware we're running on. That's somebody else's problem. So let's load up some supporting services here. All of these services, MySQL, the PHP programming language, the Apache web server, are things that, again, have strategic importance to Yahoo. So we have to be good at these for other reasons. Obviously, we're a web services company, so having a kick-ass web server makes a lot of sense. Up until very recently, we had the guy who wrote the PHP programming language work for Yahoo. All of these are powering a web interface that we wrote that does all of our administration and all of our user-facing interactions. Every time somebody touches Yahoo through a web browser, they're doing that through code that we wrote. The big part of what this means for us, what this means for IT, is I don't have to be the MySQL expert. We've got fantastic MySQL experts when I have replication questions, when I have character encoding questions. I can go talk to somebody the hell else, and I can focus on the part of the stack where I'm really adding value. And I think that kind of division of labor is really important within IT, because if we decided to take on Postgre here because I thought it was shiny, that's really going to make this solution unsupportable for us. So let's talk about the part of the stack where we are adding value. We're using Asterisk, open source edition, the 1.4 branch. Through the whole project, one of the goals that we set for ourselves that's actually been really easy is we don't want to get into the habit of patching Asterisk. And through the whole deployment, that just hasn't been necessary. We're not writing any C code here. I've talked to some vendors, and a lot of people want to start with their value proposition on top of Asterisk is we've written this little private library of bug fixes that make Asterisk business ready, and that totally has not been our experience on this project. So we're going to summarize all this up, save you guys a little eye strain, and call that server Yahooized Asterisk. And of course, it's not just one. We've got a second server. We keep it up to date through MySQL replication and rsync, so we've got a little fault tolerance within a site. So we're ready to register phones. We use Linksys phones on the desk. We use life-size phones in conference rooms. You can make anything work with Asterisk. It's a fantastic solution. The reasons that we chose Linksys are all about being able to operate at scale. So one of the big reasons, one of the things, you look at how big the playing field is and how do we narrow that down, how do we make an excellent decision, we decided right away no paper labels. We're a giant company. We've got offices in Chicago. We have 100 people. They're salespeople. They're not technical. They get a visit from IT literally once a month. So for me to say when that guy visits the Chicago office, he needs to spend an hour with a typewriter and an X-Acto knife replacing paper labels, that's totally not a use of time that I can make as a Fortune 500 company. The second thing we really like about Linksys phones is the provisioning model. The number of things that we can do down the wire, that we can do to 1,000 phones at once, the fact that it's all HTTP, all of these really make a big difference in our ability to do 1,000 of them. You can do one of anything, but you need to start thinking about, at 1,000, what are the parts of this process that are going to break down? Life-size phones are actually a little easier. We like them because they sound awesome, and because they're shaped like a spacecraft. That's kind of what it's come down to. When we originally made this decision, they had some advantages. They were the only ones that did power over Ethernet to a conference phone, some little things like that, GSM shielding, and Polycom is caught up in almost everything except spaceship design. So the other thing that makes a big difference, like I said, it's a huge playing field. Having a value-added reseller that can take you through and say, all right, these 80 you don't have to talk about because nobody buys them, and these 10 you don't need to look at because every time somebody buys one, they ship it back the next week. So we're actually working with E4 Solutions, and it's been fantastic that we have somebody we can talk to that is bigger than we are. We think of ourselves as a big company, but we're not bigger than their whole client book, and that's made a big difference for us. So we've spent a little bit of time talking about what Yahoo's good at and the impact that has on a design. Let's spend a second talking about something we discovered we're really terrible at, and that's PCI cards. Turns out, outside of Fibre Channel, there's no one in the whole company whose job it is to plug cards into servers. It's just not expertise that we have anywhere. So when we started thinking about how do we get calls outside of our little voice cloud and into the public telephone network, we made the decision to solve that with Cisco after we tried Digium, after we tried Sangoma. Which gets us back to playing to our strengths. We have a great network team, we have out-of-band management, we have parts depots, we have the ability to check Cisco configs into source control just done automatically because we've got this huge Cisco fleet. We're spending in capital maybe 4 times as much as we could have done if we'd done this with the Digium product. We think we're getting it back in operational efficiencies, but it's purely a personal decision. A couple other nice things we get out of this design. One is it's really great that Asterisk supports H323 and MGCP and EEX and Skinny and the Skype protocol. All of those have their uses in other people's deployment of Asterisk. But because we've built it this way, all of our channels in and out of Asterisk are SIP. It reduces our troubleshooting profile, reduces the amount of training that I have to give somebody as they come up through our support tiers. That's been really excellent for us. So not to disparage those other channel types, but not having them is a big weight off of my back. The other nice thing we get here is scalability. So because we're all SIP trunks, the signaling traffic's going through the Asterisk box, but the voice media is going directly between the handset and the router. So that's got a little impact for us. So how do we care for it? As I mentioned, as we were getting through the depression phase, one of the things that we did spend a lot of time on is what's our support structure? It's not 3 smart guys in a room anymore. It's spread out over the globe. It's spread out over more of the organization. We have 33 people trained as Tier 1 technicians. This makes a huge difference for us out of the whole IT shop here. A couple of really nice things to note about this. First and foremost, only 4 of these guys actually have telecom technician on their business card. Everybody else has some other job inside of IT. They handle new hires, or they handle terminations, or they spend most of their day with Exchange, but they pitch in on Asterisk just as part of their ticket load. So we have less people that are just telecom guys, but more people that are caring for the solution. The other thing that's nice about this is because we chose to go with the paperless model, because it's all VoIP, a lot of these guys were able to staff out of what we consider to be our low-cost employment areas, which ironically enough for us is Lockport, New York, and Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So India is actually a fairly high-cost center for us. So one of the reasons that we're able to have non-telecom people supporting our Asterisk solution at Tier 1, this is the interface that people use to add a phone to the solution. You'll notice it's got 6 fields. 3 of those are multiple choice. This is as simple as we could think to make it. So this is, again, it's an interface that we wrote for ourselves. So a lot of the assumptions, a lot of the things that Asterisk is capable of, we're shearing away, we're taking that choice away from ourselves, but it makes it easier for us to care for the solution. These are our Tier 2 technicians. By the way, all of these pictures are self-submitted to our corporate intranet, so I apologize to Rich when he watches this later. Our Tier 2 technicians, obviously we're growing up the complexity scale a little bit, so all 5 of these people spend most or all of their time on telecom. 4 out of 5 have telecom engineer on their business card. These guys are handling the things that happen more than twice. So a lot of that comes down to troubleshooting PRIs, dealing with vendors, that kind of repetitive stuff, helping us turn up new locations and so forth. And this is Tier 3. Tier 3 is our middle-of-the-night ninja assassin tiers. These guys are working on MySQL replication. They're opening bugs with vendors. They're developing new features. This is the top of the tree. And like any great Ponzi scheme, it gets narrower as you go towards the top. So one of the things that's interesting about Tier 3 that I think people find unintuitive, Alan, who's the trainee on the right, fresh out of college, barely knows what a 110 block looks like. The skill set that we're looking for when we're staffing Tier 3 is all about, do you know how to SSH into things? Do you treat tab completion as like, you expect the whole world to have tab completion on it? Are you good at SQL statements? Alan doesn't have a butt set in his cube. He's not working on ring generators here. It's more of a server skill set. So, what's in it for the users? This is something that we're proud of. I think when you work in IT, eventually it starts to grind on you that you make a lot of decisions for people that they're good for them, they're eating their vegetables, but they're not delighted about. So for everybody here who's ever had a project where you have to force people to do an antivirus scan once a day, or you're digging at your users in some other good for them but they don't appreciate it way, we wanted to get a little bit away from that with the Asterisk deployment. It's not literally true that we only have 5 features, but that was kind of a guiding light for us. We looked at we know Nortel has 100 years that they've been able to build up their feature sheet, and we just don't need a lot of those features, or they weren't a priority day one for a knowledge worker firm in the 21st century. So we skipped them, or put them off until we absolutely had to. So this is the viewing your voicemail page. You can play a message, you can delete a message. That's 100 vendors have that. We're pretty proud of the fact that it works on Internet Explorer 5, 6, and 7, and 8. It works on Firefox and so forth, but all that's kind of table stakes. So let me talk about what we think we're doing that is a little bit unique. If you look at the from field, the first call there is me dialing into the system from my cell phone. So like almost every company I've ever worked at, we have a corporate intranet. It's kept up to date by telecom and facilities and the users themselves, and they're all providing what their phone number is, and we always choose to not tap into it. So as I called into the system, we did a dip against that database, and by the time my Linksys phone was ringing, we had correct name display for an incoming cell phone call. Now that we're looking at the voicemail page, and I have literally hundreds of milliseconds in which to render the page, we're going to pull in even more information. We're going to get my instant messenger status, all of my other callback numbers. We're going to pull my mugshot off the intranet, and the little Yahoo logo here links out to our intranet, so you can look at who's my boss, what are my hours of operation, link out to my calendar. The second one here is actually a vendor, Harold, who's in the audience here. When Harold called in, the first time, all we got was numeric display. So I listened to the message. He says, "Hi, this is Harold," and we clicked add this person into the database, and then I marked him as shared. So from now on, when Harold dials anybody at Yahoo, they're also going to get name display. So pretty excited that we're just able to plug this into the database. We're able to plug this into data sources that we already have, and everybody gets a little smarter because of the solution. The other thing that's worth mentioning, one of the reasons that we chose to write our own front end is we're tying this into our own authentication system. So to get to this page, you're logging in with your username and password that you use for everything else. For your email, for your HR interactions, requesting time off, so on and so forth. And we attach that user ID to your extension. So when you get to this page, we've authenticated you in a really rich, meaningful way for IT, which means I'm okay with you doing self-service PIN resets on this page. If you've forgotten your PIN, you never set it up, whatever. What's great about this is that's a whole class of ticket that adds no value. IT doesn't like working on it. Users don't like calling in about it. And it's just self-service now. We just don't get those calls. This is the page people go to self-provision a soft phone. So 2,000 people at Yahoo are entitled to a soft phone on top of their desk phone. And we have another 800 users that are actually soft phone only without a desk phone at all. We made this self-service in part because we're using X-Lite. We just let people download it themselves. And because we're just giving them their own credentials, if they like Zoiper or if they want to bring in a Wi-Fi phone, that's actually enabled. We're really positive about letting people do this. I mentioned a second ago, we do have a lot of people that are soft phone only. There's a little bit of a backstory to that. We had a tower that we chose to close in Santa Clara this year. About 1,000 people needed to move out of it and move into a building that was unfortunately still Avaya phones. We didn't have budget to replace them all with Linksys phones. We didn't really want to do 1,000 Avaya tickets either, because that's not the direction we're facing. So the bargain that we came up with was we actually made it an opt-in program. We sent out an email. We said, if you choose to reply to this or put in a ticket, when you get to your new desk, there won't be a desk phone. And instead, we're going to give you a $30 Plantronics headset and access to a selection of free soft phones. Of the people that we surveyed, 25% took us up on it, which that's got its pros and cons. Every now and again, you'll read an article that says the desk phone is dead and everybody's going to go to soft phone. I heard that at the OCS talk. I don't think that's true. Our numbers don't back that up, and we're a pretty tech-savvy company. But I do think those 25% are an indicator that's definitely worth looking after. So this isn't the Oprah show. I tried to get budget to give everybody a Kindle. That didn't work. So instead, I'm going to try and leave you with some nuggets of wisdom. The first one, as I'm preparing this talk, I started thinking about the transition between the scrappy upstart technology and we're the standard technology of a Fortune 500 company with 40 people trained on the solution. That transition was actually really hard for me personally and professionally. There was a very tough time in my career to make that transition. And it occurred to me that I'm going to be encouraging a whole room full of people to go down this same road knowing that there's this huge pothole in the middle of it. So I started thinking through what are the things that I could say to the engineer who's going to have this solution that they're very proud of, that they've spent all this effort on, suddenly under this new set of review, and how can that person make peace with this? So The first metaphor that I thought of, because it's very cliched, was maybe it's like sending your kids off to college. You've done all this hard work, you've gotten them to survive adolescence, and now you have to let them leave the nest. My daughter's 4 months old, so that didn't mean anything to me. So, as I often do when I need inspiration, I turn to spaceflight. This is the space shuttle. The white pointy bits on the side are solid rocket boosters. The little cluster of gray engines are the main engines. As you can obviously see from this picture, the boosters are doing all the work at this point in the flight. The main engines, at this point, don't have enough get up and go to make the ship hop. So the boosters are doing the whole mission here. What people don't know, what's not really obvious as you're watching it, is the booster's whole job is done 2 minutes into the mission. And then from that point forward, it's the main engines that maneuver you through space to get you pointed back down. And a mission can be 16 days, it turns out. I love Wikipedia, by the way. So what the metaphor that I came away with there was, the mission wouldn't happen at all without the booster rockets, but their whole contribution is encapsulated in the first 10,000th of the mission. But they're still providing really valuable service. All right, so that ends the corny part. The second part that I want to leave people with is I've met a lot of amateur, not amateur in the bad sense, but just amateur in the you're new to this and you're transitioning from screwing with Asterisk to using Asterisk. And people want to really spend a lot of time agonizing about what server am I going to run this on and how many calls per gigapixel can I get out of it. I don't think that's time really well spent. My advice would be go with a reputable vendor, go all out, spend $2 or $3 grand, buy a nice server, and then just stop thinking about it. You're going to lose a server. We've lost 5 at this point. And it's going to ruin your whole day. But you're going to get through it. You're going to go to your failover plan, or God forbid, you're going to bring it back from tape, and you're going to get through it. On the other hand, if there's something you didn't think about as part of your provisioning model, or something that you forgot to do, and it makes you touch 5,000 phones, that's going to ruin your month. That's going to ruin your whole quarter. I've got stories that I don't feel like I can tell because they really do make the vendor look like a buffoon. Come find me afterwards if you want to hear them. But all of our telephone provisioning screw-up stories are so much worse than our server screw-up stories. So I think that's a more important place to spend your time. And the third one, and this especially goes for Fortune 500 companies, you've got thousands of teammates, you have people that can be experts in these really narrow fields. The most important thing that you can do is choose to stand on the shoulders of giants. Choose to use the elements that your organization already has to be good at. So it doesn't matter that you're here at ITEXPO and some schlub got up on stage and said, Asterisk and PHP go together like peanut butter and jelly, which they totally do. That doesn't matter. If your organization is excellent at Perl, you've got to work this in Perl, or you're taking on way too much work, and ultimately it's going to fall down. So to boil this one down even more, be prepared to snap Asterisk into the stack that you're already good at, the stack that you already support, because it's flexible enough that it's going to meet you there. So that's the talk that I had. I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions. We got time for one question, especially if it's from that guy who's in the Fortune 500. All right. Go ahead. It's an interesting question. So the question was, if we had gone down a more commercial route, do we think the team would have looked the same, right? Or how would the team have looked different? Speaking for how we had chosen to solve the problem when we solved it with Avaya, right before we made Asterisk the standard, the way we solved it was we had a lot of junior guys and a couple of senior guys, and we didn't have a career plan to get from A to B, and we didn't have enough senior guys to do all the project work that we needed. It made us really too dependent on professional services, and it made it so when we had a failure, we had a huge learning curve. Whereas with Asterisk, you have to go through that learning curve to stand up the server in the first place. You're not going to get to a point where you have infrastructure that you can't support because you had to learn all that hard stuff back here. Does that answer your question? Right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.